The thing that got me here, the thing that allows me to make a difference in the world is telling my story. And so I've just got to keep doing it.
Isn't that amazing how that comes together? And we talk a lot about that in this show of authenticity and how that is trending finally, oh my gosh, in corporate America, because I think a lot of people are not able to really stay in corporate America anymore unless they can be themselves. I mean, you have this kind of like mass exodus and people starting their own thing because they want to self-express. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Prevention Pioneers. I am your host, Laura Coons. And today we have an awesome guest, Sims Tillirson. That was a big intro, so you better be as billed. I just said awesome. So let's bring it for our audience. Welcome, Sims.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Now there are two people in my life that have told me I'm awesome, you and my mom. So we're doing great. We're doing great. But so happy to be here with you, Laura. Excited for the chat.
Good. Yeah. I mean, honestly, when I first saw you, the keep going hat, that right away did it for me. You clearly are a man on a mission. And I want to help our audience understand that, how and why and how you apply that and all the things you do. Let's jump into that. Can you help our listeners understand all of the different things that you're into on the professional side, and then help them understand how, the one part of your bio that jumps out at me is mental health messaging strategist. So I want to know how that weaves through all of it, like everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, okay. I'll give you guys the kind of quick and dirty rundown. So I run a little one-man consulting shop, and I do a lot of stuff through that consulting shop. So I serve as a go-to-market advisor and fractional revenue executive for vendors and regional brokerages in the employee benefit space. So if you see 10 company names when you look me up on LinkedIn, that's why. Because I'm serving a lot of companies fractionally. Yeah. Beyond that, I do a lot of sales coaching for brokers at Gallagher, Locked In, regional broker houses. And then I co-own a media company called Red Flag Hero that we talked about as well. But probably the most important job I have is not one I get paid for. And this is where I'm going to tie the mental health stuff in for you. So I get a chance to keynote speak on mental health at benefits conferences, and that is awesome. But that's really the limit of my true mental health experience from a working perspective. But that important job I wanted to tell you about is that I serve as the president of the board of directors for a nonprofit here in South Carolina called Pathways to Healing. And we're a rape crisis center. I'm a person that suffers with complex PTSD, and I'm on a sobriety journey as well. I know we talked about that a little earlier. Yeah. But where my trauma stems from sexual abuse as a child. That is why that board service is so important to me, because our focus is to be there when people are in crisis, but to help them get back on their feet after, and to help take care of their friends and family as well, and help them cope with the dark things that have happened in their lives. And it was, hindsight is 2020, but my years and years and years of substance abuse can just be traced back to that. And I never dealt with it until I became an adult.
Yep. Absolutely. But on one of the previous episodes that did come up, because as you referenced, Sims and I, for the audience, we were talking prior to the show getting started, and we are both people in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder. And trauma is actually a part of the origin of my story as well. So I really relate to that. And then I have a lot of respect for people and professionals who are willing to say that as boldly and as proudly and just as confidently as you are, because I believe you do that because you understand the importance of doing that.
I do. So there are a few reasons I do it. I think that every time I talk publicly about what I've been through, I help one person.
Yeah.
I usually have somebody reach out to me and be like, hey, man, you're an idiot for putting that on the internet. I would never say that, but I struggle with it too. Thank you so much for making me feel seen. It's healing for me every time I talk about it. And I'm finally to the point that if me talking about the stuff that I've been through, the real things that have shaped who I am bother you, I don't need you in my life. So
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
it's so
cool.
true. And I don't know about you, but in like my professional life, I do feel that the whole process of recovery has really given this unique skill set. I call it transmutation of turning pain into power. And there's so many ways that applies, I think, in personal professional journey. And then if you're a leader, how you lead teams, how you interact with people, and then I think also understanding dynamics within organizations, because if a person, and just for the audience, and this is coming from my years in behavioral health, that's my background. Um, for the audience, that there's a lot of work and that goes into a person's healing journey. So, there's a lot of therapy, sometimes treatment, and there's work on your spirituality. It's truly a mind, body, spirit journey that somebody goes through. So, for that, number one, to not change a person for the better is actually impossible. And number two, for that person to then not go share it like you are, Sims, that to me is a missed opportunity. So can you share more about how you started sharing about this professionally? Like, when did those two things
Yeah.
cross?
Well, let's go back to 2020 where it's COVID.
Oh boy.
I have just left a Fortune 500 insurance carrier to go into a leadership position at a startup.
Oh, good
And
lord. Is
I
that where your hat comes from? Keep going. His hat said keeps going. His hat says keep going.
That's what I had to tell myself in the mirror every day working at any of the myriad startups I've worked at. But as you can imagine, on the carrier side, I was pretty flush on the travel and entertainment side. So I was really used to getting on planes, going to meet with brokers, going to meet with employers to sell them. COVID happens. We're not doing that anymore. I'm also at a startup. We don't have a ton of budget, right? So I'm floundering through cold calls that don't land, really cringy LinkedIn DMs that don't land. And I finally am just like, hey, I'm just going to start writing on the internet because I like to write. I'm a musician, songwriter, have always written poetry. And so I'm like, I'm going to write content. So I started writing all this terrible content, like leadership content
Yeah.
no one wanted to read. And then I was just like, you know what? Nobody's reading my shit anyway. No one is responding to my outreach. I'm just going to be real.
Oh,
And
good.
so I started talking about first my experience with alcohol. It was scary to start posting about having an alcohol problem. But immediately after the first time I did it, a broker who had never taken a message from me in the past reached out to me and told me that he was struggling with the same thing and asked if we could get together to talk about it.
Oh my gosh.
And thank God I had that early win because it was such it's a scary thing to start putting yourself out there. But the more that I've done it, the more that I feel like I've affected people and drawn people to me. And that, eventually talking about this stuff on social media led to podcast appearances, which led to keynote speaking appearances, which led me to consult for mental health companies. So my view on it is like the thing that got me here, the thing that allows me to make a difference in the world is telling my story. And so I've just got to keep doing it.
Isn't that amazing how that comes together? We talk a lot about that in this show of authenticity and how that is trending finally. Oh my gosh, in corporate America, because I think a lot of people are not able to really stay in corporate America anymore unless they can be themselves, right? I mean, you have this kind of like mass exodus
Yeah.
and people starting their own thing because they want to self-express. And like your story, I do think COVID was a catalyst for that. It sounds like you have been a pioneer in that, in this employee benefit space, which I'm so interested in because you do not see a lot of people doing it in this space.
No, our space is very stale, male, and pale, and really buttoned up. And I've never really been a fan of that. I mean, you can see I've got
Yeah.
lots of tattoos. I'm doing my best to rein it in, but I say lots of F words all the time. And, I like to just be who I am. I'm a really good sales guy and a really good go to market mind. And I don't think that me not wearing a suit changes that.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. And I think that the people I've met so far in this industry, I mean, we're what, a year and a half in fully, a couple years just meeting people in the
Yeah.
industry. But it was a huge shock coming from behavioral health care because like everybody is like you're being, it's like
Yes.
that's
Yes.
what we do because we're helping people. And if you have it's the opposite. If you have a facade, you don't fit and you stand out. And if you don't have a facade, that's what heals. That's what people trust. So
Right.
like, why should that be any different in organizations? Have you come into pushback on that or negative, like haters? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I've been executive level at a handful of companies that I've worked at where we've had a board of directors who usually take to calling me every day to tell me they don't like what I'm putting on the internet.
Ooh.
Um, a lot of it comes down to them really wanting a curated version of anything I say, right? Which I hate. And I also worked for a very, very large company in the last 2.5 years, where I was incredibly successful. And I got calls from my manager and the HR team at least weekly about the content that I posted on the internet. And it wasn't specific to, hey, this post you made about alcoholism is like off putting, but it's like more around, hey, you're oversharing, or we don't want you to talk about these things. Like, we really just want you to promote our products.
Well, and then how do you navigate that? Have those been opportunities for you to educate then and
No.
empower those people or no? Or is it just like take it down? Like, how does that work?
Had a hilarious example of at that large company I talked about. I got an inbound lead from a 7,500 life company. It wasn't even for my territory. It was a really, really large deal for our team. And it was because of all this content that I share, right? And that was the example I tried to surface is, hey, this head of human resources, a very, very large company, reached out to me to buy our product, and I'm giving it to another sales rep to help
Yeah.
them with their quota. It's in their territory. But this is what happens when I act like this on the internet, when I'm authentic on the internet. But it didn't phase them. So I ended up having an incredible 1 year with them, President's Club, very proud of my performance, and I quit.
It is sometimes too hard to forget those things because it really gives you a snapshot of what the deal is. And a lot of times, not just in like personal professional experience, but even in the work experience and conversations we've had, and then my previous role in behavioral health, it's those individuals that are still in their closets,
Yes.
mental health wise, and what do you think with the organizations you've worked in and now with? What layer do you think, if you had to choose a layer, is the most important to have like mental health messaging down? Is it executives? Is it middle managers? Is it grassroots, anybody and
Yeah.
everybody?
I think it's middle management
Yeah.
because at that large company I was talking about, one of my really good friends was my manager, and he was an incredible manager. And he was very in tune with my situation and my mental health reality, I guess. So he was very adamant about, if I'd be on the road 3 weeks in a row, he's like, hey, man, you're off next week. You're not keying PTO. You're off next week. You need a break. Really encouraging me to take care of myself. And, my manager in any company is typically the person I interact with the most at the company on a daily basis, right? So they're the one that to me can step in and affect change for an employee.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, have you seen any strategies in play or that you've recommended for organizations of how to empower that middle layer to be more open about it, to message it more correctly. I mean, I think that's not a given for people. Like, that's a difficult thing. Like, you and I would know
Right.
how to have those conversations with somebody, but would the average middle manager know? Like, let's say they had an employee come to them and say, I'm newly sober
Yeah.
and I need to prioritize my recovery. Like, the average manager, what would they say and do with that? Or, I have, like, my husband needs to go away for treatment and I'm now a single parent for the next 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And
Like,
I
what are
think
your
what most managers do is they go, "Oh, well, we have an EAP."
I know.
Right?
Ah, ah.
But I think that there are so many things that can be done, right? Even if it's solely just in time training on, hey, if you hear this, this is how you respond and this is what you provide. And it might just be, hey, I'm so sorry to hear that your husband has to go away into treatment, but I'm very glad that you guys are able to prioritize that healing for him. How can we best support you as a team as you go through that? We're happy to provide resources, but are you going to need time off? Can we make a plan for you to do that? Right. And then being able to say, also, our company provides these resources for you. Here's how you can get in touch and use each of them right now. Because I think I don't have a very kind or forgiving view of EAPs in general. But I think that the majority of the problem with them is not necessarily how they're built. It's the lack of awareness around them. It's the need for some of the vendors to keep utilization really low and then therefore not provide employee engagement around it. But I
Mhm.
think that even really light tools like that can be useful. They may not be the solve, but they can be useful in a time of crisis.
Mental health challenges make up 10% of workplace healthcare costs and lead to billions in lost productivity each year. Traditional employee assistance programs were created to help address these challenges. However, they are often underutilized because they are focused on reactive solutions instead of proactive solutions. That's why we created Spirence, to prioritize mental wellness in order to prevent mental illness. Spirence's science-backed platform offers an extensive and continually growing library of mental health courses, crafted and delivered by clinical experts. The platform also features live events, interactive coaching, on-demand support tools, and dedicated support for managers. Our approach results in over 800% higher utilization than traditional EAPs. The world is moving towards proactive care, and Spirence is leading the way. Spirence, the future of workplace mental health.
If we look at the research, the latest data, even SHRM just published this in May, that the average workforce, 75% aren't sick. They don't need the crisis support or they don't
Right.
even need counseling, but that's 75% in today's day and age, like yours and so many stories, like they are wanting to stay well now
Right.
post-COVID. People are open to mental wellness. It wasn't really a thing 5 years ago. I mean, for you and I in our worlds, it was.
Right.
Now everybody's into it, open to it, but only 25% even need clinical care. And then such a small percentage of that 25 know that they need clinical
Mm-hmm.
care or are willing to get it. So it's kind of like that is not the solve for
No.
an organization.
No, it's not. And there are great organizations out there that provide non-clinical support, but I also, and this is purely anecdotal, it's not backed by data, but I also see a pretty significant resistance for companies to invest in non-clinical mental health support.
Agreed completely. Yeah. Agreed completely. We are seeing that shift, though, I will say, because we're on the subclinical side at Spirence, and we're seeing huge shift this year. But I think that's also the data's there now,
Yeah.
So people are like, okay, it's kind of in our face. And, we just launched a content pilot with one of the largest banks in the world on substance use disorders.
It's
Like,
incredible, isn't
can
it?
you believe that? I know. I mean, just as a person in recovery, it was like my inner advocate was like geeking out. It
Yeah.
was like, really, like, you're gonna actually openly talk about alcohol abuse. I mean, it was like they did one on mindful drinking, they did
Hmm.
one on substance use disorders 101, what addiction looks like in the brain. It was like, oh my gosh, like, that's amazing that we're here in
It
terms of
is.
advocacy. So when did you first start? Like, do you remember when you're first kind of like, I know through COVID you started posting about it and then you had that broker reach out,
Hmm.
and how did that snowball from there? Like, to where now, I mean, I'm assuming it's a part of the work you do with
It
organizations
is.
too, right? Like, how do you do that?
We went from posts to I did a lot of podcasts through the kind of COVID era where I told my story in deep, deep, dark detail, right? And that got me opportunities like being on this board that I'm on. And then eventually I got calls from organizers of benefit conferences who are like, hey, we want a mental health speaker who says some real stuff up here. Can you do
Nice.
that? Right. So I start doing that. And so I'm able to do some keynote speaking around my story and around like why I think we need a revolution back to direct primary care and why EAPs suck. And, everything in between there. And it's just become such a forward piece of my identity, you know? And I think that one of the unintended consequences has been that even in my sales training now, one of the reasons that people come to me for sales training is because I'm like the anti-hustle bro. I'm like, how do you hit your quota without coming close to burning out?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so that's a lot of what I coach on the sales side. And that's sort of the marriage between go to market and mental health for me.
And do you use tools from your recovery for that? Because recovery does teach a lot about like prioritizing and self-care. I mean, those things really are crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a lot of what I talk about, especially in one-to-one coaching, we can get tactical with salespeople about how to do their jobs better. But one of the most important things for a salesperson is being able to show up confidently and authentically into their workspace. That's what actually makes a person perform. It's not necessarily having the best script. It's having the 6 inches between the ears in the right place. So a lot of what I'm talking about with people is just holistic wellness, right? Like, did you get your 8 hours of sleep? Are you eating clean? Have you moved your body this morning? Have you spent time in the sunshine? And prioritizing those things. And then from a self-care perspective, it's prioritizing PTO and prioritizing soft things that make you feel good. For me, it's like pedicures and facials and massages. I always got one, at least one a month on the calendar, and tattoos too. Those help. But
I
I
love
think I think
Wow.
all those things
Oh,
are important.
yeah. Is tattoo a soft thing?
Tattoos are not a soft thing. My therapist doesn't like that I say this, but I always tell her, it's self-harm is frowned upon, but if I pay somebody a few $100 to do it, it's cool.
Listen, I can't say I disagree. I mean, I've got a couple of hit workouts in the queue that would say the same thing.
Yeah.
I just need to annihilate myself right now. Like, let's
Yeah.
go. But yeah, sometimes you do need that too. It's like we all have our own pressure cooker and different things pop the lid for each
Yeah.
person. So it's like that's great though. So, well, and just that message alone, I feel like you've said several things in this conversation that are hopefully helping people who are listening. But like one of those is all you have to do is show up as yourself.
Just as an aside, I have a coach for myself, like an executive coach for my business, but everything we do is about him helping me show up in an authentic and aligned way in every piece of my life.
Was that difficult for you to do before you got sober and before you started to speak openly about all of this?
Yeah, it was. I had never really talked about it. I mean, they were like, my wife knew, one or two of my friends knew, and like my therapist knew, right? But I was still abusing substances really heavily to kind of turn my brain off, right? So
Yeah.
I got sober from cocaine and opiates 8 or 9 years ago. but I kept drinking. So my drinking like escalated pretty heavily, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I didn't drink during the day or anything, but I was the guy that I would go home and like drink a bottle of scotch by myself to get into a place where I didn't have to think about any of the stuff that had happened to me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I finally quit drinking, just shy of 7 years ago, that I was able to start walking down that path and be honest with myself about all the bad things I'd done to people in the midst of my substance use, and then also honest with myself about all the bad things that had happened to me.
Wow. Honesty is such a key piece to because there's to me there's sober, meaning you're abstaining, and then there's sober, meaning you're living in honesty and authenticity
Yeah.
and you're present and you're connected. And to me that is such a gift that those of us who have to get sober from substances are able to pass on to others that second part of that gift, because I just haven't come across a person who just is, has no self-awareness to
Right.
create along their path. You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
like why we're here. It's like what we do.
Yeah. And to your earlier point, like after going through all of that healing and stuff, like I am objectively a better person than I than I
Yeah.
was 7 years ago.
I'm sure your wife could attest, but it sounds like she
Yeah.
loved you through it all anyway.
She's seen some rough stuff for sure.
And so then there's also that I think that's important to talk about. And a lot of our listeners are from the corporate wellness space, so I do think that touching on that family piece is
Mhm.
important because when we're talking about presenteeism, in the workplace and what a lot of people are showing up to work every day with on their hearts and on their souls and on their minds. So many have loved ones that are struggling with mental illness and substance
Yeah.
use disorders. So, how was that journey for your family? And then how has everything you've done and are doing now brought everybody next level? Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
imagine it has.
So it was difficult. Luckily I didn't have kids yet when I went through this, so it was just me and my wife. I mean, it was hard for her to reckon with at the beginning
Yeah.
when I just said, "Hey, I know that I got off narcotics like not that long ago, but I 100% have a problem with alcohol." Um, and so it was hard for her to reckon with. She was really focused on denial a little bit, and then like, well, what happened? Did you sleep with somebody? Did you kill somebody? Like what happened? You know
Yeah.
what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And and
Once you start digging,
yeah, yeah. So that was tough, but once we got through kind of the initial growing pains, she was really, really there for me, and she had to be. It was during a time when I was in a sales job. This was back in 2018, and my team, we were all really close, but we went to happy hour like every day. I was on planes entertaining, like, and so relearning that stuff, how to show up in spaces where alcohol is present and not drink was really, really difficult. So having her there to help me through. And I also did kind of a non-traditional recovery with a group called Unity, who is not specific to substance abuse. They're specific to addictions of any and all kinds.
Got it.
So, I was in virtual recovery with cokeheads like me, people that were addicted to porn, people that were addicted to eating potting soil, like
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. A
and
local
everything
group
in
like
between.
that. Yeah, and it's awesome. Yeah.
So it was very, very interesting to me, but it wasn't, I wasn't going to AA meetings in person every day
Yeah.
to get sober. I was doing it this way. So I had to lean on her very heavily. And luckily, when she determined, hey, this is what you need to do, get sober from alcohol, like I'm all in with you. But I think the thing that it has led to in the life of my family is that authenticity is valued and rewarded. Honesty is valued and rewarded. Difficult conversations are normal in
Yeah.
our house. And it's taken a long time to get to that point. I'll be clear about that part. But the ability to have a really direct conversation with somebody close to you about something they did that hurt you or something you did that hurt them is very, very powerful for everybody in the household to be able to feel seen and heard and loved and taken care of. So I think that has been a very beautiful thing. And I think something we haven't experienced yet because the kids are still young is that kids are going to grow up in a house where they get to hear the real stories of what happened to their dad when he delved into substances so that they can make educated decisions for themselves about how they choose to approach those things.
And it is so powerful breaking that generational curse and passing on that education to the kids. My husband and I are both in long-term recovery, actually. And our kids are 7 and 10, and we already see it. We already see the principles of recovery and just kind of that language of, to your point, authenticity, like rigorous honesty, all of those things. But as we've said multiple times in this conversation, make no mistake about it, for individuals in recovery, not just from substance use disorders, but mental health conditions, that takes work,
Yeah.
and I think that's something in terms of stigma. It's one of my personal missions to help people understand that it's such a respectable path. And I'm not saying that because I'm on it. I'm saying that because I have literally watched thousands of people and helped thousands of families through it. And it can be excruciating. And so when people come out on the other side and they do what you are doing, Sims, and they take that pain and they turn it into power and they pass it on to that next generation, they take it into their workplace, they take it onto podcasts, they take it onto stages. Like, I just got chills. Like, wow, wow.
But
So
it's our responsibility, and it's a joy and a pleasure and an honor to be able to do it.
yeah, you can tell. But now, so when you share certain parts of your story, like in the beginning of this conversation, you did share that the origin of your disease, the origin for a lot of substance use disorders, is trauma, especially complex trauma, like you
Yeah.
experienced, sexual trauma. Are there parts of your story when you share that you still have to like psych yourself up for?
Yeah. About I think it was almost 2 years ago. It was in November. My little brother and his now husband were getting married. I had my second son was only about 6 weeks old, and I was in deep crisis. And I've struggled with suicidal ideation throughout my life as a result of my PTSD, and I planned my suicide. Um, and that one is hard to talk about. That still breaks me up a little bit. I had planned to come back from my little brother's wedding, had a little note written, was going to walk down by the river. And at the time, I had a Xanax prescription for panic disorder. And I was just going to see how many of those bad boys I could eat at once. But when I got back, my oldest son was inconsolable. And as luck would have it, he had a pretty bad case of RSV. So I stayed up with him all night and then got up the next morning and drove about 4 hours back to where we lived to take him to the ER. And we stayed there all day long. And then I was just focused on getting him better. And, that came and went, and it took me some time to tell my family what had happened. But that's hard to talk about.
Goodness, I am so grateful that you shared that, because I will say that at Spirence, that is one of the things that we've heard quite a bit from organizations. Some organizations have actually lost employees to suicide. They've had executives or staff lose loved ones to suicide. And I think just like substance use disorders and this top bank of the world that's
Mhm.
putting that out there, I think organizations now are way more open to talking about it. So the fact that like you are open to talking about it, and I don't know about you, but do you find that people really connect with that part of your story?
Yeah, I think far more people than we'd probably like to admit struggle with ideation. And that story specifically is one that people have grabbed onto, and it can be scary for me when this happens, but I have people I don't know reach out to me in crisis as a result of me sharing this story, but I've been able to help folks get like inpatient treatment when they're in those spots, and
Yeah.
make better decisions than I made when I was in crisis because, if whatever invisible strings or universe powers weren't at work, I wouldn't be here.
Oh gosh, that your story, honestly, it gave me chills again, second time in this conversation, which I believe is, Holy Spirit moving through whatever you want to call it, the universe. Everybody has kind of their connection to
Right.
that feeling, that power.
I think that a lot of these things that we talk about, sex abuse, substance use disorder, suicidal ideation, these are things that a lot more people deal with than you think.
Yeah,
And that is why we have to talk about them because there's something really healing and freeing when I'm experiencing a feeling like that. I call one of my friends that has also experienced that feeling and I tell them about it and they can help me make that feeling feel little and manageable and normal. Like I'm not the only person on earth feeling it.
absolutely. And what's wild is you and I were going to say the same thing because that's what I was going to ask you is if that's, because I would think that that would be a ripple effect of you doing what you do is you then kind of share your light with that next person who's willing to share maybe with a couple colleagues and friends what they're going through, their darkness,
Mhm.
their pain, their story. And then those people have somebody to call when they're
Yes.
struggling. That peer support piece is really huge too. And a lot of the municipalities and first responder organizations we work with, they have that down. They have infrastructures for that. But if you're working in a culture where it is not open and people aren't talking about mental health and it's real buttoned up, just
Mhm.
kind of that like old school, like boomer culture, whatever I always hate on the, because you got all these generations in the workforce. So
Yeah.
really just boomers, I love you guys. You more just represent that old school suck it up buttercup mentality. That's how I meant that comment of, we don't because you guys didn't have the opportunity to talk openly about that.
Right.
Those weren't the cultures that they were in. It was you show up to work, you clock in, you clock out. You're a robot, you produce,
But
and
at least you got a pension.
at least you got a pension. See, that was the difference. Right, they would do it because they got a pension, but,
Yeah.
I mean but, like, Sims now and I'm sure you see that every day in your work on the consulting side, but that organizations are now, I think, really open so many more open to help with that. How do I build like, in the recovery world, we call it a recovery-ready community.
Mhm.
So I'm interested in the language we could use in the corporate world for what we would call that, right? Like a mental health. I don't know. We got to give that a term, but
Yeah. We do need to give that a term. But I think I'm seeing leading indicators that we're moving in that direction. I mean, there are companies now that give quota relief to their salespeople so their salespeople can take PTO
I've heard of
without
yeah.
feeling like they're gonna, destroy their earning capabilities by doing it. That's a big deal, I think.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. We actually have a company in the behavioral healthcare space, and they own and operate treatment centers all over the country. They're a huge, huge, huge network of treatment centers, and they incentivize their salespeople. We don't have salespeople in the behavioral healthcare space, but we have outreach representatives that
Sure.
will field those initial calls when somebody needs help. So it's 24/7, but they'll incentivize them to use their PTO. So it's part of their comp. If meaning like
Yeah.
if they don't use their PTO, they're deducted.
That's incredible.
Yeah, not deducted. I don't know if they're deducted comp, but it's like a point system. They're like
Yeah.
deducted points of performance. I
That's
mean,
incredible. And
yeah,
But we have to align incentives in that way if we
Right.
really actually care about mental health for employees. Because it's one thing to say, hey, we have unlimited PTO and an EAP and, we're really open culture. But if you don't have managers who are watching their top performers to say, hey, dude, you haven't taken PTO in a while and you need to. If you don't have people that are adept enough to have conversations when people do come in this open culture to have conversations, right? Like if we don't build the infrastructure around actually getting people help and actually getting people preventative care, whether it's PTO or self-care or a module through your company or something like that, if we don't make those tools available and create those systems, then it's all just talk and it doesn't matter.
Oh my gosh. Well, right. And because it requires a time investment for that
Exactly.
manager, because sometimes that'll be followed up with, well, but my workload or I don't have anybody to cover. So then it would be that manager investing the time to say, well, let's get you covered
Yeah.
because you are important. And I mean it's interesting, like on another show, the idea of like sports teams and professional sports teams and the performance and the high achievement and the pressure that comes with that, because they're finally investing in mental health support
Mhm.
and mental skills and holistic living and mentality. So why would it be any different for performance in an
Right.
organization?
Right.
It's like the same set of muscles and skills to perform. We're humans. So it is shocking how few cultures have it, but it is, to your point, encouraging how many cultures are becoming open to it.
Absolutely. I think we're probably on the very front end of companies really showing they care about their people in this way, but I'm excited to see where it goes with some of the first movers.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited. And I want to come watch you speak at some point.
Please
So
do.
yeah. And do
I'm
you
I'm
have any?
speaking at Self Fund Health next month in Milwaukee,
All right. I was just
delivering
going to
my
ask if
my
you
little
had
mental
any.
health talk. Yeah.
Okay, if you had any opportunities for the audience. And then are there any other places that our listeners can listen to, more in-depth parts of your story or any other place you want them to find you?
Yeah. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. And so I'm just LinkedIn/n/Sims Tillerson. And I share a lot of the podcasts I do, speaking engagements, and I write a ton about things that have happened to me in my life.
I can't wait to go read it. And then I also wish, now knowing that you are a singer-songwriter, from doing the research on you prior, I wish I would have asked for a song to close us out.
Could have had one. Could have
Darn
had
it,
one.
Sims. Maybe.
But I've still got a few albums out. So you guys can search up my name on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. For the mental health crowd, I recommend listening to Pull You In.
Ooh, I love it. I'm gonna have to check that out. I didn't realize you had an album, so that actually helps. So I'll go listen to your album. I love the hat. It says "Keep Going." And then, do you want to share with the audience why you're wearing that hat?
Yeah, so there's this dude that I'm only friends with because of LinkedIn. We've never met in real life, but he's really inspiring to me. His name's Tim Pereira. Was a super high level tech sales executive. Left that gig to start his own company where he helps folks be better versions of themselves through mental health work, through mindfulness, through fitness, nutrition, whatever it is. But right now, Tim is walking all the way across America to raise $50,000 for men's mental health. And he's like 2-3 weeks away from reaching the East Coast. So he's almost done.
Oh
Been
my
pretty incredible
gosh!
to watch.
So he's doing it. He's
Yeah.
like, wow. Okay, I am gonna check him out. And then I do have to say that your mom was right. You are awesome. You were as billed, and it's been a true honor to just kind of be in your energy, hear your story, and I'm so impressed with just everything that you're doing and how you've woven it through everything that you're doing. Like, talk about mission centered living. right? Like purpose-centered living.
Well, it's easy when we know what we care about, when we know what's important to us.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta look in those dark places to find
You
out,
do.
guys. Come on. That's your nudge if you're listening. You gotta just look in those dark places and don't be alarmed. We all have them, and it's amazing what you can find and heal and then go turn around and help
Absolutely.
somebody else. So thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Prevention Pioneers. Thank you to Sims, and we will see you soon with some great upcoming guests. Don't forget to follow and share, and we will see you soon. Thanks.